Hi guys, welcome. So today we're going to wrap up the pressure washer video, which I've already done. But if you record a video and your microphone battery goes dead, then you end up redoing the video. So that's a lot of fun. So for those of you that maybe just want the short, too long, didn't read, sick of listening to my voice, I am the most boring detailing channel on YouTube. 3.2 gallons per minute, 1,000 to 1,100 PSI, somewhere in that range. The gauge isn't very accurate. That's using a 40-degree 6.5 orifice nozzle or a 7.0 25-degree nozzle. I'm within 4 decibels of a Kärcher K1322, and total invested is around $1,600. Now, I think that you can do something almost as good, like very, very, very close, for about $1,150. So now digging into what we have for those of you that came to stay for the entire time. This is a pressure washer that I built out of a couple different parts. So it's a Nicolini motor. It is a Comet pump. There's a couple, unloader valve and some other different parts that we had to get. And this control box is from a company called CanPump. And I constructed this by ordering a couple different parts. They came in, I put them together, had some trials and tribulations. There were a couple other videos on this, and ultimately ended up with what you see here. This entire thing started because I, like many other people, was looking for the best pressure washer for our home, and I wanted it to be electric and not gas. And I owned a Kärcher K1322. I know a lot of people own the AR630 or the 675, or they might own a Comet, or they might own Active 2.0 or 2.3, or a variety of other pressure washers kind of chasing this most amount of output that we can get. So in the United States, we have 240 volts delivered to our panels at most houses, like everything that's modern. And then we split that up into 2 120 volt legs. So we've got 120 and 120, and then we power all of our stuff in our house off of it. Most consumer electronics like this TV, 120 volts, perfectly fine. It only draws a couple watts, very simple. For big appliances in our houses, like my hot tub or my jacuzzi or my oven, those all need 240 volts. So we have 240 volt that feeds them, and then you end up with more power. When I had my pressure washer originally installed, my Kärcher, I added an outlet here, and that outlet was a dedicated outlet, meaning that there is a wire that goes from here directly into my panel. And I did a 12 gauge wire, which allowed me to do 20 amps at the distance that I need to travel. So my panel is over there, has to come to here. It's like 35 feet in total. So 12 gauge wire allows you to take 20 amps that distance. Now I have an electrical background. I know a lot of people don't, and that's fine. But the thickness of the wire or the type of the wire doesn't necessarily care about the voltage. It cares about the amount of current. So what I mean by that is that 12 gauge wire can do 20 amps at 5 volts, or it can do 20 amps at 300 volts. The wire is actually rated for, I think 300 is the max per neck. It was currently doing 120 volts. And in order to step that up from 120 volts to 240 volts, you just simply change a breaker in your panel. Very nice, simple to do. And then you can change the receptacle on this side to be a 240 volt receptacle, which looks like this, like the little guy's winking at you instead of like he's got his eyes straight up, right? I made this premise that the reason why we weren't seeing water output over 2 gallons per minute and we weren't seeing increases in flow was that the motor was the maximum amount that we could put on a 20 amp circuit, and we were just running into the limitations of physics, right? So I looked at the specs of a couple different motors, and at 120 volts, a 1.5 horsepower motor is right around 15 amps. So that makes sense. Okay, so that's what we were doing. We're hitting the limits of a 1.5 horsepower motor on 120 volt because we're designing systems for 120 volt because most households have to 120 volt. But if you're running a wire anyway, if you're having an electrician do a run from your panel to here, there is no reason why you shouldn't do 240 volts anyway. There's no reason at all. It doesn't cost any more. The components aren't more expensive. You could just do 240. So 240 volt 20 amp, what is the biggest motor that we can run? Well, it's 4 horsepower. So that's a 4 horsepower motor It spins at 1750 RPM, so that's the amount of speed that it spins the little thing at, and it draws 17 amps. So there we are. 17 amps is the maximum that this can draw at 240 volts, and we're good. Okay, so now what is the biggest pump that can run? So I went and looked at a bunch of different pumps, and unfortunately most of the pumps are built for high pressure, low flow, or high pressure, medium flow, right? Most people are looking for 3,000 PSI or 2,000 PSI, you know, some big pressure number. They're not looking for the 1,000 PSI that a lot of us in the car washing world have been targeting for a long time. And you can argue all you want to in the comments about the pressure, whatever. I don't need 2,000 PSI to wash my car. I don't. And I don't want to risk catching a chip or catching an edge of a painted panel or something along those lines and peeling paint off my car. There is no reason to do it. I am not degreasing a driveway. I'm fine with 1,000 PSI. So I want to target the most amount of flow that I could on 1,000 PSI. And there are a lot of people that have done like dual Krenzlas or dual ARs or, you know, dual this or dual that. And it's like, well, what could I do with a simple unit that's actually well built and robust if I go to 240 volts? Well, this is it. So we've got a Nicolini motor, we've got a Comet pump. That Comet pump is rated for 3 gallons per minute at 2,000 PSI. I increased the orifice size to drop down the pressure, and I was able to get it up to 3.22 gallons per minute. And it works really, really well. So the way that I bought it, I bought a motor and I bought a pump. And then after that, I ended up having to get an unloader valve and a bunch of fittings and a control box that has the relays and contactor and thermal unit and timer and all of that stuff in here. And it ended up being like this expansion that happened over time, a little bit unexpectedly. I'm very happy with what I have. I'll show you the performance here on video, and I'll show you the audio output here on video as well. But as far as performance is concerned, we got 3.22 gallons per minute, measuring by spraying into an empty bucket on a scale and measuring the weight of the water that we collected. So that 3.22 gallons per minute was between 1,000 and 1,100 PSI. Like I said, the gauge is kind of small. It's not the most accurate, but I'm just trying to keep the needle in the middle between 1,000 and 1,100. And that's got a nice feel, and it's not, you know, ripping your hand back when you squeeze the trigger, but there is definitely a significant amount of flow. So when I got the unit, motor and pump, the first thing I found was that the pump didn't fit the motor. Why? Because the Nicolini motor has a special adapter plate on here specifically to work with a Bertolini pump. Okay, so I ended up having to get an adapter that isn't really available, and therefore I can't really link to it, but I got a flange plate from CanPump and they were able to get me going. So then I had it going, but I didn't have the ability to regulate pressure. So to regulate pressure, you end up needing something called an unloader valve, which is this thing here. So the unloader valve, basically what that does is when you let go of the trigger and it stops flowing water, all this water pressure that's sitting here has to go somewhere. So this opens a valve here and it circulates back through. And it does that for a period of time, at least until the motor stops spinning. But depending on how you have your control box set, I can actually set it to do that for up to 15 seconds. So I can let off the trigger, it'll run for 15 seconds, and then it'll stop running. So then I needed to find an unloader valve. Got that, got my fittings. Then it was time to, okay, now how do I make this thing shut off? How do I have total stop? That's where you let go of the trigger and this unit actually stops. So I added this as well. So if I was going to recommend something to you and you're interested in pursuing something like this, there is a kit that you can buy from CanPump. I will put a link below. It is not an affiliate link. I can't affiliate this because it's only available from them. And it comes with this exact motor and a slightly different pump. That pump flows 2.8 gallons per minute on paper. I'm expecting that you're going to get a little bit over 3.0 if you use the same size orifices that I have. It is a self-contained unit. It comes on a blue shelf similar to this. I'll show you the shelf. This is what the shelf looks like. So the motor mounts here on these motor holes, and then down here, this control box comes pre-installed. So if you buy that for $1,150, you can basically take this thing, bolt it to your wall, connect your inlet, connect your outlet, plug it in, or wire it in, and you're good to go. Like, it is a self-contained unit. So that is what I would recommend exploring for somebody who is interested in something like this. And if you had any questions, please reach out to me, because I'm actually interested in how the thing performs so that I could talk about it a little bit more definitively. But it's rated for 2.8 gallons per minute. This was rated for 3.0. I got about 3.2. So the math would say you should be able to get about 3 gallons per minute. And Bertolini, from what I understand, is a pretty reliable pump company, just like Comet is and just like AR is. Let me show you how this works. So this is the finished version. I have it sitting here on this stainless steel shelf. This is the OG shelf, so it's like an 8-inch deep, 18-inch wide shelf from OG. That's what I originally bought for my Kärcher K1322. Obviously, like I said, I've got the Comet pump here. This is my inlet. This is my bypass valve, so I can adjust my output pressure here if I want to. I have this cranked all the way down because I actually want to adjust my pressure with my orifice instead. And then there are 2 pressure switches. We can see one here, and those feed into the box, and that's how it senses to shut off. So this is plugged in. We can see there's a light here. This is a red light right around my hand, and there's a green button right here. So if I want to use the pressure washer, I walk up to it, press that, it builds pressure, shuts off. Now, when I'm ready to use it, I pull out my hose. That's it. And as you can see, we have our total stop. When you let go of the trigger, the unit stops running. Now, with this, you have the ability to, there's a timer in here. So there's a thing that's got a little dial on it. I'll show you a picture here. But basically, you can spin it left or right, and you can say, when I let go of the trigger, this is going to run for a couple seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. You can, dial it in however you want to. So that could be useful for something like, if you're out cleaning your car and maybe you spray off a wheel, then you go to the next wheel, then you spray off the next wheel. You don't necessarily need it to shut off and turn back on, shut off and turn back on, shut off and turn back on, because those on-off actions aren't necessarily good for the motor. The amount of time that I do it as a prosumer in my garage washing, 4 cars that are already clean, it's negligible. If you were using it all day, every day as a professional, you might want to kick that up to 10, 15 seconds or something like that, just to kind of limit the amount of on-offs that the unit has. So here I'll drop a video where I did some sound pressure testing of this versus the Kärcher to see what the difference was in sound output when you're actually in the garage. All right, so what we have here, this is a mini DSP UMIC 1. You might be familiar with this if you've ever done any sort of like room correction or audio adjustments in cars or that kind of stuff before. This is an audio assisting tuning microphone. So it's designed to be pretty accurate. You can see my voice is registering here. As you can see, when I talk, the SPL registers. We're going to open up this logger view right here. And the logger is going to show a graph over time. So what I'm going to do first, I've got this exactly 10 feet from the pressure washer. So we're going to start off with the new pressure washer, the 3 gallon per minute unit. I'm going to start the logging here. So now we're going to hook up the Kärcher. All right, so we see 74.0, seems to be about the max. All right, so we see the Kärcher right at 74, it's pretty consistent. And then we see the new one between 77 and 79, again, pretty consistent. I went a little further away with the hose because I was thinking that you might be hearing the sound of the water. So I'm pretty solid at 77 based on that. So the pump itself, I would say, is 77 versus 74. I did it for 10 feet away because I figured that's about the closest you're ever going to be to the darn thing. And we saw it was like 4 dBs or less. So the difference in sound really isn't that much. They're both not very loud. Honestly, the water coming out of the nozzle is louder than the unit. And the unit isn't it's not a squealy sound, it's like a nice hum. So therefore, the loudness isn't really as it's not as annoying to me as something like, you know, an active or some smaller pumps would be. That's a wrap on the pressure washer saga. Honestly, I'm really happy with what I ended up with. I think it's super solid. I think it works incredibly well. I did see a little bit more vibration on this. I added these are vibration isolators. I got them from Amazon. They're pretty cheap. I'll put a link in the description below. I'll put a link to all the parts and everything that I have. I will say, like, you're not gonna be able to find this flange. So you're better off buying the kit that I'm also going to link at CanPump, which is $1,160. It's less expensive and it's already complete. Some things that I had to change because of this, well, obviously I changed my outlet to 240 volts. I added some like rubberized, like drawer liner, kind of, see it here, underneath all of these bottles because the on-off was making them shake a little bit and I was worried that they were going to walk their way off of these shelves. You know, I gotta say, I'm really pleased with it. I really like it a lot. I think that it looks awesome. I think that it sounds great. Like I said, it's slightly louder, but the performance is well worth it. And when you're outside, you can't even hear the motor running over the water anyway. Like the water is definitely the main attraction here. Some other things that I'm looking to change in the future, I might try to add another one of these vibration isolation units just to support this pump head. There is like a threaded adapter here in the bottom of the pump, just to kind of, because I've got this like cantilevered overhang a little bit, so just to even it out a little bit more, add a foot here, like where my fist is. The other thing that I'm going to change is I'm going to go to a different style tank, and that's not really because of the pressure washer. It's more so because these tanks, they have a pressure bladder in them. The pressure bladder means that I can't use 100% of the tank. So basically, if we look at a tank like this, right where this weld line is, there is a piece of plastic that is in there all the way around. And when you fill up this tank with water, that stretches and there's air over the top. So because of that, you can't fill this tank fully and you can't empty it fully either because you end up with either suction from this getting pulled down by the water or pressure that you're pushing against when you're filling it up. So this is a 35 gallon, this is a 20 gallon. I'm guessing that I have about 30 gallons of total water storage there, maybe 35. I have a tank that will be here tomorrow. I ordered it like a month ago. But I have a tank that'll be here tomorrow that's kind of similar to this. It's square. It's 18 by 18, it's about 5 feet tall. And that's gonna sit here, and that is what they call an atmospheric tank. So that tank does not have, it's got a lid on the top of it, but the lid can breathe. So I don't have to worry about, you know, pressure and all of that stuff. I can just store 55 gallons of water. I'll have more storage, more room, all of that, and just kind of clean this area up a little bit. So this will get moved over maybe, and I think that one's gonna go like right here, and anyway. So all that to say, I'm really happy with the pressure washer. It works incredibly well. There's a lot of adjustability here. There's thermal protection and other things that are built into this as well. It's well designed. And I think the performance is just awesome. And if I need a part, everything here is fully rebuildable. I can get parts for the Comet pump. I can get seals. I can get a different motor. I can get, you know, kind of whatever I want. Those are available. So over time, it could change slightly, but I think I'm pretty close to what I want it to be. 6.5 40 degree and the 7.0 25 degree nozzles, they work really well. I had these nozzles for a long time. These were the ones I was using for the Krenzla, and you can see on the inside there is that insert. So all I had to do was order a new one of these where my finger is, and I was able to just swap that out. So that's all that I have for today. Thank you for watching this. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down below. Shoot me an email, jeff@improvedgarage.com. My email is in the description. It's improved-garage.com. There are going to be a bunch of links in the description. Everything related to the pressure washer is likely not going to be affiliated. So if you buy it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. But I'm happy to help you with it anyway. I'm not necessarily in this for the money. I've talked about that before. Anything else that you buy from House of Rags or Amazon or you know, DIY Detail or Diamond Pro Tech or any of the other links that are down below in the description, those give me a small kickback, usually about 10%. So it is one of the ways that you help to support my channel and, you know, help me to afford to buy a $1,600 pressure washer simply to do a series of videos on it. If you're wondering about my Kärcher K1322, it's sold. I had 3 people offer to buy it before the videos were even done, And the first person who offered, I took him up on his offer, I shipped it to him, and he received it last week, and it arrived unscathed, but that breather cap for the oil is not a plug. So it does let oil out. So he ended up with a little bit of an oily mess. But I also sent him a quart of Krenzlet oil so that he can do an oil change on it anyway. So it worked out. He just ended up with a mess. Sorry, Adamo. But that's all for today. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, any of that kind of stuff, let me know. I realize this is unnecessary. Like, we don't need 3 gallons per minute. We could clean our cars with a garden hose. I mean, like, we could clean our cars with a garden hose. But it's what I wanted, and I was able to build it. And if you're looking for an alternative to 2 Krenzlas or to 2 AR630s or to some of these other options that may be out there, I think this is a pretty cool one, and it's one of those times where we're using an industrial grade product to do a home-based task. In my case, maybe you've got a detailing shop or something along those lines, and you're looking for something. I think it's a really cool option. So, thank you for watching. Have a great day.